Each and every season, defensemen continue to be the most important position in fantasy. In competitive leagues, they always go extremely early, so it's really important to find value in the later rounds where you can pick up a power play 1 defenseman that's going to be putting up a lot of good points and good peripherals for your team. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my 6 favorite defensemen going into the season based on value and opportunity. This is going to be a good video, guys, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Moritz Seider continues to fall in drafts, and I really can't wrap my head around why. With Shane Gostisbehere gone, that opens up even more minutes for Seider to play. Not to mention, there is now a spot available on the top power play unit, which we saw Seider thriving in his first NHL season. So I know a lot of you are thinking right now they signed Erik Gustafsson in the offseason. I will say, yes, he does have the potential to start on the top power play unit, but it's his to lose and Seider's to gain. And if Seider does start the season on the top power play unit, he should be in line for a massive season. There's a lot to like here from him. But luckily, even if Moritz Seider does not skate in the top power play unit, he has some of the league's best peripherals amongst all defensemen. So last season, he matched his totals from 2022, putting up 42 points, 14 of those points being on the power play, while adding 135 shots, 213 blocks, and 211 hits. For a guy that was playing under 23 minutes per game last season, these are massive numbers. I'm all over Seider this year at his ADP. I do think you can easily take him as your defenseman 1 or defenseman 2, depending on who you draft in the first couple rounds. He's going around round 5 and 6 in competitive leagues and falling even later in non-competitive leagues, meaning you can get massive value from a guy who has been producing for his entire career. One of my favorite things about Seider, and a lot of people struggle with this in fantasy, is a lot of these high value defensemen, they do tend to get injured. And with Seider, he has not missed a game in his entire NHL career, playing back-to-back 82 seasons, meaning that he's a very safe option to hopefully give you a full season of games and massive peripherals. Now, for right now with Seider, again, like I mentioned, I think I would be taking him around 4 to 6. It really is contingent on your league and your league's peripherals, especially if your league does include blocks as a points category. Seider is an absolute stud there, so he's a guy I definitely want to be rostering on my team. Again, if he gets that top power play unit opportunity, he should be in line for a massive season. We're currently projecting him for 82 games played, 55 points, 22 points in the power play, because we do think he will get that power play 1 opportunity, and 150 plus in all 3 of the major peripheral categories. Last year, he surpassed 200 in both. We're being a little bit conservative this season, but there's definitely opportunity for him to surpass those numbers going into 2024. Arguably one of the best pickups of last season, Brock Faber shined in his first full NHL season. He was someone I did have my eye on in really deep leagues, but we really had no idea what we're going to see from him. And with Faber, I would say he arguably had one of the biggest impacts of any rookie last season. You can definitely argue Connor Bedard, but with Faber, he stepped into a #1 role on a team that desperately needed defensemen, especially with the departure of Matt Dumba and the injury to Jared Spurgeon. Faber was able to step into a #1 defenseman role and play massive minutes. So at 21 years old, he was on the first pair and the top power play unit, playing 24 minutes and 58 seconds time on ice, and played in all 82 games last season. It's really hard to argue that Bedard did have a bigger impact than him, but I don't want to get into this discussion. With Faber last season, 47 points, 16 points on the power play. He was moved up to the top unit about a quarter of the way through the season, and that's when things really took off. He also had 136 shots, 150 blocks, and 65 hits, giving him very solid peripherals, not above average, but just around league average, but mixing that in with the power play opportunity and the point upside, there is a lot to like from Faber. In the second half of last season, he ranked 6th amongst all players in the league with 25 minutes and 12 seconds average time on ice. Very impressive from a rookie defenseman. So in that time, so over those last 30 games of the season, the second half of the year, Brock Faber was 10th amongst all defensemen in points. Like I said, with defensemen, we need to be finding guys with good value. Faber is going around defenseman 25 off the board right now at ADP 109, meaning you can get a ton of value for Faber on a guy that should be guaranteed to skate on the top power play unit and guaranteed to play a top top line role. There is a lot to like from Faber this season. A perfect defenseman too, especially if you're grabbing a guy around ADP 30 to 50 as your defenseman 1. You can follow that back up a few rounds later and grab Brock Faber in the 7th and 8th round. He seems to be actually falling in drafts, and I really don't know why. He's going into his 2nd season. He signed his contract. There is a lot to like from Faber this season. He's a guy I want to be drafting on all of my teams, and you should be too. I just want to take a minute to let you know that the Fantasy Puck Patreon leagues are officially open for this season. This is our 2nd annual season. We had over 84 managers competing last year, and we're hoping to reach over 100 this year. Make sure you secure your spot. The links will be in the description below. If you have any questions, just make sure you leave a comment on this video or join our Discord and send me a message at FPMike. I'll be sure to answer as soon as I can. We have drafts beginning as early as mid-September. Everything will be live streamed, so you're going to be able to watch your drafts back again. You'll be able to compete and talk with other active managers within the Discord. It's super exciting. Again, any questions, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to answer. Now, no more of me. Let's just go back into the video. I feel like I'm almost repeating my sleepers from last season, and Zach Rinsky was on the thumbnail, but he continues to fall in drafts just like the other defensemen I've mentioned on this list, and he has huge value. And honestly, he kind of looks like Chris, but don't tell him I said that. If he watches this, he'll know, but don't tell him I said that. He kind of looks like Chris. Anyways, with Zach Rinsky, I understand he's always a risk. He barely plays a full 82 games. Last season, we finally saw a 71 game season from him, and he shined. He had his highest season for points in his entire career, and on a per game basis, when he is healthy, he's amongst the top defensemen in the league. And for a guy that's going defenseman 26 or 27 off the board right now at ADP 115, that's huge value. So last season, like I said, crushed his career high in points, playing 70 games, 11 goals, 57 points, 12 points in the power play. So really good numbers on even strength, even though he kind of lacked the power play points. If we assume that potentially this power play gets a little bit better going into this season, Rinsky could be in line for 60 plus points, but because he lacked those power play points, he didn't fully flourish in the points category. But he also mixed in over 200 shots, which is one of only 5 defensemen last season, 130 blocks while playing 24 minutes and 27 seconds. The guaranteed #1 guy on the back end for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who honestly, I don't think has that good of an outlook going into the season, but I'm here to secure a guy that's going to be a top power play. If you play in plus-minus leagues, he definitely should be falling a good amount, because I can't see that plus-minus being very good on Columbus. But if most of you, including myself, do not play in plus-minus leagues, because I just don't think it's a good counting stat for fantasy hockey, Rinsky is your guy this year. So over the last 40 games of the season, Rinsky ranked 3rd for time on ice, 9th for points, and 3rd for shots amongst defensemen over those last 40 games. His offensive abilities are up there with Makar and Yossi, and a lot of it's contingent on the success of this Blue Jackets offense. If they can put things together, we know that Gaudreau has had a couple down years, but Fantilli looks to be a pretty promising player this year. They added Sean Monahan. Hopefully they get a little bit better. So for this year for Rinsky, we're projecting him for 52 points, 13 points on the power play, 209 shots, 26 hits, and 110 blocks. Again, kind of conservative given our point totals are a little bit lower than what he had last season, but if he can stay fully healthy this year, play 82 games, he should be a 60-point defenseman with over 200 shots. You cannot find that value after ADP 100, especially with how early defensemen are going in competitive drafts right now. So Rinsky's my guy. I'm going to be taking him and probably talking about him in more than just this video. Is this the 3rd repeat from last year? Someone's going to have to go audit me on that, but John Carlson is falling in drafts, and I literally do not know why. So I do get it. Jacob Chikrin's now there, and he may take some time away from Carlson, but where Carlson really shines is on that top power play unit. There's no reason for Carlson to not sustain his role as the top line defenseman and the top power play unit defenseman that led the NHL in time on ice last season with 25 minutes and 53 seconds. He was one of my favorite guys last year. I think I drafted him in 6 of my 8 leagues last year, and he paid off solid value for me for a guy that was going like defenseman 25 off the board. Last season, he played all 82 games after missing time in the season prior. He's honestly a really, really durable defenseman. He just got really unlucky last season where, if I'm not mistaken, he took a shot to the face and missed a bunch of time. And that's just a freak accident. It's not a lower body injury. It's not an upper body injury. It's just a puck to the face. So he doesn't have any lingering hamstring injuries or wrists or anything. It was just an unlucky injury that kept him out for about 42 games the season prior. So last season, he played all 82, scored 10 goals, 52 points, 21 points in the power play, mixed in 176 shots, 194 blocks, and 70 hits. One of the highest block defensemen in the league last season, even though he's 33 years old. So last year, he finished around defenseman 12 to 15 contingent on your league, while going defenseman 28 to 30 off the board. That's huge value, and that's exactly what we're going to see this year. He's a perfect number 2 or number 3 guy in your league, given the security of his role and his durability on the ice. Now, for me right now with the Capitals power play, it struggled a lot to begin the season last year. I remember doing a video about how they actually had one of the biggest differentials in terms of goals for and expected goals for on the power play, and they finished 18th on the power play last season. So even if their power play gets a little bit better or remains status quo, he should easily be a lock for a 50+ point defenseman with over 160 shots, over 150 blocks, and 60 hits. So we actually have the blocks as a little bit conservative because last year was an outlier year. But if this is something which we may see moving forward from Carlson, it only adds to his value. He's currently defenseman 30 off the board, and we actually have him ranked as defenseman 11 in standard Yahoo leagues right now. Now, this varies contingent on your scoring, as I always say in videos. But with Carlson here, guys, you're getting great value from a guy who led the NHL in minutes last season, is a lock for the top power play unit, and is one of the best producing defensemen in the last 5 years in the NHL. There's a lot to like from Carlson this year. I know he's getting older, but I'm still on him just as much this year as I was last season. All right. I know what you're saying. Stop repeating your players from last year, but man, I can't get over the discounts you're getting at some of these power play 1 defensemen that are in better spots than they were last year. Jake Sanderson, former 5th overall pick. I do think he will end up being a Norris candidate defenseman at some point in his career, with potentially contending for the Norris, and I hope that it may be this season. But the Ottawa Senators team, they're not really that much better than they were last year. They were really, really disappointing. Guys like Tim Stützle struggled a lot last season, and Jake Sanderson didn't produce to the defenseman that we thought he was going to be. But with Sanderson last year, you drafted him super late, defenseman 4, defenseman 5, and that's completely fine. Right now, he's about defenseman 36 off the board at ADP 131, a massive discount for a guy that should be in a way better spot than last season. So we know Jacob Chikrin, he's now on Washington Capitals, meaning that opens about 22 minutes time on ice for other defensemen. Sanderson should receive a bump to play up to 24 minutes this season. Now, I know what you're thinking too. Same thing. Thomas Chabot, he's there. When he's healthy, he usually has an impact. Last season, when Chabot was healthy, Sanderson still led all defensemen on Ottawa in power play time on ice and overall time on ice. So hopefully we see that from Sanderson again this season. With Chabot, he's probably one of the most injury-prone players in the league. So it's really difficult to project Sanderson to not be playing a number 1 role when we have Chabot that's continually injured. So Ottawa's power play last season took a huge dip, and that's why the production for some of these players like Tim Stützle dropped off a cliff last season. So in 2022, they had the 8th best power play in the league. In 2023, they had the 25th worst, or the 25th best power play. So the 7th worst power play in the league. And some of those players struggled because of that. And now if they come back down to earth, maybe they're a middle of the pack power play team, Sanderson should be in line for a great season. So this year we're projecting Sanderson for 78 games played, 50 points, 22 of those points on the power play, 149 shots, 45 hits, and 143 blocks. He could be a league-winning defenseman if this power play can figure itself out and really surpass our projections this year. But for me, Sanderson's a great defenseman 3. I know a lot of people in the fantasy puck community are currently on him. So in our mock drafts, he's going a little bit earlier than he should. But in most drafts, you could grab Sanderson pretty late as your defenseman number 3 to really round out your roster and get a guy with solid peripherals and great upside this season. Let's round this video off with potentially the power play 1 defenseman in Florida. It's really hard to say right now. I do think it will begin with Aaron Ekblad just because he was on the top power play unit for spurts of last season with Montour and when Montour was not there, mixed in with OEL as well. And those are 2 perfect guys to segue this segment. That's a lot of S's. So with now Montour gone, that leaves 24 minutes. And then now we have OEL gone. Who's left? It's going to be Forsling, Boquist, and Ekblad all fighting for the top power play unit. But even if Forsling doesn't skate on the top power play unit immediately, it's definitely an option for him. So right now, there is a huge opportunity for him to now elevate and step into that #1 role, where we saw him flourish a lot last season. So for Aaron Ekblad, he's actually missed 25% of games over the last 3 seasons, meaning that an injury is very possible to him. And I don't really want to be drafting defensemen contingent on injury, but sometimes taking that next defenseman in line makes a lot of sense in fantasy, especially at a discount that you're getting him. So for Forsling, it's not as big of a discount as the other defensemen. He is actually going a little bit earlier than Carlson, Rinsky, Faber, which is shocking to me. I do think Forsling will end up falling down ADP a little bit more than we're seeing right now, but he's also coming off a huge season in 2023. He played 79 games. He had 10 goals, 39 points, a league best plus 56, 160 shots, 102 blocks, and 111 hits. He also finished 9th for Norris voting, and pretty good waiver wire claim for the Florida Panthers. Like, that's a really, really shocking. Probably one of the best waiver wire claims we've ever seen in the NHL. Let me know in the comments below if there's other defensemen or other players that you remember having this much of an impact after being claimed from waivers. But with the boost of Forsling's minutes and really nothing to his power play time, he's currently our 25th best projected defenseman, which is right around where he's getting drafted. But that's assuming no power play time. So if we do actually add in some power play time and we do see that Ekblad gets injured, he is an easy player for a 50-point season with 20 power play points, and to easily reach over 120 in the peripheral categories. It's just a matter of getting those hit numbers up a little bit more this season, similar to what we saw last year. Again, outlier years, so that's why the hits in the projections are a little bit lower than they should be. But with Forsling here, guys, he should be stepping into a big role, playing 24, 25 minutes per night, and hopefully on skating on that top power play unit. That's a big thing here. But as training camp starts to roll around, we'll start to understand a little bit more of where guys are going, who's on the top power play unit, who's skating on the top pair. But I love Forsling going into this season, a guy that is, I think, going to be slept on, and a guy that I want to be taking on all my teams, especially if you play in those, I don't like them though, but plus-minus leagues. That will do it for the must draft defenseman video. If you enjoyed the video, guys, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Projections are out. Fantasy Puck Patreon leagues have started. Make sure you go in the description below and get access to our Patreon to make sure that you are set up as best as you can be for your drafts, and also competing with us at Fantasy Puck and all the other awesome members of our community. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.